Today's our gardening special, but along with gardening projects, 'tis the season to plan those landscape projects. Here's the question though, which should you tackle yourself and which do you leave to the professionals? Here with his recommendations is the one and only Frankie Flowers. So Frankie, let's talk a little bit about this, and let's start with this idea of design. When in design do you DIY and when in design do you go pro?
You know, so design is a really important thing because planning it's always about planning. If you have a good plan, you're going to have a good result. So when it comes to yourself, there are many different apps that you can go out there and plan some of your plantings. So there's a couple ones that I like. That one's called iScape. But some of the designs that you can also do is come into a garden center, take some pictures of your home, and ask the garden center for some recommendations on plantings. When you need to hire professionals, if you have a large project, let's say that project involves some different retaining walls and slopes, it involves a pool, it involves gas, it involves plumbing, it involves a project that maybe even needed to phase over several years, that's when you want to hire a landscape professional. That could be a landscape designer or a landscape architect. A landscape architect is when you have more hardscape structures, even some pool houses, things like that, or you're even working alongside of a conservation authority or working with a conservation authority. That's when a landscape architect would really be a benefit.
Okay, so we can get quite involved then if you're relying on all these different folks to plan your space. So you have to look into how big the project is. Let's talk about installation. So when do you DIY that and when do you go out and get a pro?
Yeah, it's an exciting time of year. We go to garden centers and we're pretty excited. We're pumped. We go there, we walk around, we get inspiration, we see our neighbors. When it comes to plantings, basic plantings, of course you can do it yourself, no problem whatsoever. Some small water features you can do yourself, fountains you can do yourself, even some smaller interlock or even some smaller pathways you can do. If you're just doing rough concrete, you can do that yourself. There's so many different YouTube videos out there. You can always ask a friend that has some experience as well. But if it's involving slope where water will be coming and flowing towards the home, word of warning, you could do it yourself, but that could be a costly mistake. If all of a sudden you need to do other different things that involve, let's say, finished concrete. Finished concrete, stamped concrete is an art form. You want a professional for that. If you're doing any electrical, you need by law to have a professional. Any gas, you need by law to have a professional as well. So many different services that you can do on your own. However, there are many ones that you should be doing with a professional, and the reason why, it's going to be safer and it's going to save you money in the long run.
Yeah, electrical, gas, you don't want to mess with any of that stuff. Get the pros in for sure. Okay, let's talk a little bit about maintenance. I'm thinking for maintenance, there are probably a lot of things you can do yourself, but maybe bigger projects bring in the pros. What do you think?
Yeah, so when it comes to maintenance, first and foremost, in spring, remind yourself that you haven't been out in the garden in a while. You need to stretch, and I don't want you to hurt yourself because a lot of people do have garden-related injuries in the spring. We can edge our beds, of course. We can cut our lawn. We can do some basic pruning all on our own, and even some planting of some annuals. But when it comes to maintaining some of the larger trees that we have on our property, that's the time when I want you to hire a professional. And that professional is called an arborist. An arborist will come in, even if you have a large diseased tree, will come in and inspect the tree, tell you the proper way to maintain the tree, but also will take care of some of the large branches and prune them. Some of those branches could be deadly, and I really recommend for people, if you have large trees, deciduous trees on your property, to have them inspected at least every other year.
A lot of municipalities have lines that you can call to get folks to come in and check out any trees that you might be iffy about as well, right, Frankie?
As long as they're on the municipal property. So as long as they're on their property, they'll come out and check it out. But if it's on your property, it's your responsibility. And if it's on your property, and let's say that we have an aggressive storm that comes through and blows down a branch and falls on your neighbor's car, that is your responsibility. Worse is if that branch falls on a young child. That's when we can have loss of life. And trees, even though they're beautiful, we got to be very, very careful when they start getting bigger.
Really good point there, Frankie. Okay, talk to me a little bit about trends because we like to dream around this time of year. What are the hot landscape trends right now for backyards, gardens, front yards?
This shouldn't surprise you. The #1 trend right now with landscape installations is the outdoor office. An area space that has Wi-Fi, a covered area, and some are even installed air-conditioned little offices off on the property so that they can be away from their home. They can do their work and they can do it in their landscape.
That makes perfect sense. And it's all about that Wi-Fi. Get outside if you're working from home. It's fantastic.